usually give out YouTube. So it says we're live now. I'm just gonna. What I usually do is when we check it or when we start, I usually check, and then when it actually gets published, what I do is I cut this part. Okay, so it's saying we have 2 views already. Okay, so it is, and I can check where these views are coming from, and they're both coming from YouTube. It looks like.
That's really good for being.
I can check where these views are coming
several
from.
minutes early.
Yeah, I know it's good. So then we can double check.
Because usually it takes like 5 minutes just for like people to sort of trickle in.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm going to mute myself as I click clack around the keyboard for a second.
Okay.
Pardon. Who has the birds?
I think it's me.
I love it.
Can you hear birds?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of like green parrots in this part of LA. No one really knows where they came from because they're not like native here.
Amazing.
It's like the random birds that are like in Prospect Park, right? That were like accidentally transported.
Yeah, it's usually there's like certain. I used to live in a neighborhood that had wild peacocks, and it was like right by Dodger Stadium. There's just certain parts of LA that have like birds that descended from like probably like an exotic bird belonging to a rich person that abandoned it in a neighborhood, and then they just kind of like breed and adapt. So like here it's these like green parrots, and then in like Echo Park there's literally like just giant peacocks. Armand, I turned it off. Yeah. Let me close all my other apps. I think the connection is good.
For those that are dropping in, we're just testing right now, so you can hang out. We're just...
Oh shit! Can they see us?
Oh, they can now. Yeah, they can now see us. But we're just testing. It's okay. It's good to have this little intro period so people can just hang out, let all of the feeds catch up, let people kind of trickle in.
Okay.
Nothing has to be perfect right away. I think during the pandemic, we learned that nothing has to be perfect right away. I think we kind of thought that, oh, we're live. Now we have to like have lights, camera, action. But I think what we've learned is that it's fine to fuck up. Yeah, exactly. I was actually saying right before you came in, I was like, I wonder what our worst fuck up will be. And I can't wait for it because we'll get so many people talking about it, you know?
I don't want that.
Alex doesn't like that because she's like, but I have to have that reputation on this show.
Wait, what? Why?
You can just manufacture that yourself on the low. Like put up highlight.
No, I meant like you said.
She's like, don't involve me.
You said you didn't want anything bad to happen, and I
oh
said,
no, we're teammates. I got your back. Like we're down together. But I'd rather not yet.
I love that. Okay, cool. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, but I think more or less we're probably good to go. Looks like we have people trickling in. Hello to the people. We got a comment already.
People.
Oh,
I can't see who. Oh, there the comments pop up.
Hey.
What up, Zoe?
Hey, Zoe.
Yeah.
I'm getting like pandemic trauma from just like haven't done a live stream in so long. I thought this was over.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's never over. It's just normalized now.
There are comedy shows that now you can.
Oh shit, we're up to 3:18. We can start. Okay, cool.
There's comedy shows now that have you can buy a ticket to the live show, and then they are also live stream the live show, and you can like buy a virtual ticket to the live stream of a comedy show.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you definitely about live shows and stuff, because I baby stalked everybody for this.
Hey,
Cool.
this is perfect. Let's transition to talking to Christina, and then we will bring in Stephanie. Stephanie's going to hang out in the back room, and then we'll come to Stephanie later, and then we will see you very soon. Thanks for hanging out with us in this pre-show, Stephanie. Okay, welcome, Christina. So before you come on, we have to introduce you properly. So I'm going to play this clip.
Oh, good. Yep.
Do it. Here we go.
You ready? Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good.
So Christina, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You are hiding your script in your oven in your own house instead of on the stage this time, probably.
We can't even get into how constructed that even like that minute of footage is. I'm actually just as plainly me as I can be right now.
No, that's great. No, I know
Yeah.
it's highly constructed, but it's intentionally constructed to show how constructed things are, right?
It's actually a mix, and it became like a really fun. I mean, for those who don't know, that's like the opening to a comedy special that I filmed during the pandemic. I mean, during I would say like lockdown.
Right.
In November of 2020. So it was like pre-vaccine. So I filmed this comedy special in a warehouse gallery. And the person who directed it is a video artist named Christopher Richmond.
Okay.
I had a script. I felt like I was in control, and I knew exactly how I wanted it to look. And as we were editing it together, he ended up putting in a lot of these interstitial moments of when I wasn't aware of the camera. So it became this even weirder tension between the scripted moments and then the unscripted moments. Like I had never, I just didn't have the whole thing memorized at the time. So like I had no plans to show me, looking back and forth at the script. And then he sort of kept some of those moments. And there are moments when we had to have two different code words for cut, because sometimes I would say cut and he would be like really, or is this part of the thing? So it was we had to have this whole other invented language in order to just like know when to start and stop filming. Because if I said cut, he wouldn't believe me. So we had a code word for like actually cut. But even when he would actually cut and we would talk, the camera was still going, and a lot of those moments like ended up in the final film.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. There's this moment where you are saying, that you think it's really interesting that when we drink, sometimes, we're drinking, that we cough, but then the cough kind of takes over, and and it goes from, like, I think after the Chappelle incident, we can talk about like the different roles that a comedian can play, right? Like the ways that maybe, when you start to cough ferociously and start to hunch over, that you enter the space of being a performance artist who is, it's also kind of funny, but it's also, you know, kind of a form of, you know, this other world that you're part of. It's almost like critique, you know, and the way that it's performed.
Ooh. Yeah, that's funny. That was the only, and you know, unfortunately, like the whole special, I filmed it like a while ago, and my reps are trying to sell it, so it'll be available somewhere before the end of the year, if not on a streaming service. Then I'm just gonna say fuck it, put it on Vimeo. But it was me performing my jokes alone in a warehouse, but it was all material that I had been developing on stage just as a stand-up in the years prior, and that was the one bit that was just something I did just for the video. And it was very physical, and somehow it worked. It's funny to watch because you're seeing it on film, so you know it's okay, but since live comedy has come back, I've tried to do more like physical jokes like that, and it's really tricky to do that in front of an audience because they just get worried. But also like that joke,
I love that. That's what I want an audience to do.
I see. I like that, but it's also like, as a performer, I want them to have a good time. So it's finding that line between, well, you want them to be shocked, but not really worried, and they have to know that I'm okay. I love pushing. I was worrying the director and the people who were filming it. I mean, the joke is just that, because it does happen. Like, do you ever take a drink of water and for no reason you just start coughing uncontrollably? And then I start coughing uncontrollably for, I think we timed it. It's almost a full minute, and they felt like
it really? Oh my God, I didn't realize it was for a full minute. That's insane. Yeah.
Almost. It was really, and when we were cutting it, and the special has a lot of like quick cuts, but when we were cutting it, we all agreed that it was really important that was a single take, so we know it wasn't faked. That I was actually just trying to get myself to choke.
Yeah.
What a dark, like that's such a weird, like masochistic thing to do. I was just trying to think about how stressed out everyone was in November of 2020. That would be cathartic for me. I'm just gonna fake cough until I actually choke myself, and that's a fun thing to put in a comedy special.
For those just joining, we will explain who Christina is. So she is a writer, actress, comedian, and award-winning art critic from LA. She performs variations of her own acts in theaters, comedy clubs, garbage art spaces, and museums all over the country. She writes for LA Times, Art Forum, Tex zur Kunst, and also for television, including the Eric Andre show, Hey, on Adult Swim. And she's a 2018 recipient of the Andy Warhol Foundation Arts Writers Grant, and named, quote, Comedian You Should Know by Time Out LA and New York Magazine in 2020. Her book of essays, Aesthetical Relations, is available from Hessa Press. So what haven't you done? You're doing all of the cool things. You're like a triple threat cool girl, right?
I'm just trying to make money. That's the
You had to kill how cool it was by saying that. You're just cool.
It's exciting. No, I mean, I'm just being real. There's not, I like being part of the culture industry, but there's not yet. There's not huge bucks in art criticism and acting.
Right.
But I've been writing about art for almost twice as long as I've been doing comedy. I started out as a writer and an art critic, and then I got to a point where I was feeling very dissatisfied and disaffected, and wondering why I wasn't happy when I was like getting everything that I thought I was working toward, which was like being published in cool places and having a cool job at a cool gallery and wearing cool clothes and doing cool drugs with cool people with cool accents.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to ask you how you got to stand-up comedy, because you did come into the world of art criticism and you were a gallery manager. And when I was reading that, I was like, that's so interesting but strange to some that you would decide to take a lot of improv classes during this time. So what really brought you to this world?
There's a specific moment. I mean, I was like I wanted to be a comedian and an actor since I was a kid. But like, you know, and I did a lot of theater and a lot of improv comedy in high school. And I grew up really poor. So it was just kind of this understanding that like, well, that's not really what we do. That after I graduated high school, my parents were kind of like, okay, that was fun. Now you got to like figure out how to live, you know? So I went in and out of a million different retail coffee jobs while I was trying to finish college. And I honestly just kind of fell into art writing through interning at magazines and then wanting to write about art because that felt a little more challenging and fulfilling, falling in love with that in a way, and then just clambering to the top of that ladder and not really feeling happy. I ran into a friend from high school on the street is what happened. This is a guy who I'd done theater with in high school, and he had just kept acting. And he was kind of like, oh, that's too bad that you stopped doing it. He's like, you should just take, you know, he's like, you can just do it for fun. Like, do it for yourself. Like, if it's something that made you happy, you don't have to make it your career. And I was like, yeah. So I started taking improv classes. I got kicked out of my improv school. And then I started doing I started stand-up comedy just because it felt like the easiest way there was no barrier to entry. So when you want to do improv, you have to pay for classes. And even after, you have to pay to get coaching, you have to pay for your stage time. And then you're trying to coordinate with 8 other people. So I literally just started doing stand-up because I got kicked off of my improv team. And I Googled LA open mics and I started going. And at the time I felt like that was just going to be my creative outlet just for me, just to give me a break from the art world. And then, but unfortunately / fortunately, I fell in love with it and I started doing comedy like every night, started getting booked on like little independent shows. And that was eating into, you know, my commitment to being a gallery director. And then my bosses fired me. And they were like, they're wonderful people. They're from Romania. And the woman was like, look, we are going to let you go because it's clear you don't want to be gallery director. You want to be comedian. So go do that. And it's the nicest thing they could have done because like we're still in touch. Like now I see them out, you know, at openings or in the world, and they're like, we're so proud of you. It's so great what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. But it was just there's a couple like very specific encounters, just like running into an old friend who like never gave up acting and then getting fired.
I love this comment from Jack Rutger saying art world is funnier and comedy world is more conceptual. True or false? I like that. Oh my God, the way your eyes just lit up, Christina.
Thank you. Yeah. But it's like I'm it took me a long time to think of the art world as funny in any way, because I don't think, and that's why when we're going to get into this, that's why I love Stephanie's novels, because I think when people try to see the art world as funny, it becomes sort of satirical or pithy in a way that has no emotional core. And you know, I love the art world because I don't see it. I don't see it as like the art world, like this abstract thing or this, it's my friends. It's people that I know that make things. It's just a community. Oh, there's that word.
We're not allowed to say that word in 2022.
You can't say community without throwing up, and I can't say community without throwing up in my mouth a little bit, but I mean that. It took me a little bit to get honestly just get the emotional distance to see how funny the art world is, and it's the same thing that makes any other world funny. Like any group of people trying to do something is going to have a lot of false starts and misunderstandings. And I think me figuring out how to view that compassionately is it sounds so corny, but it's truly like having a little bit of compassion is what allows me to appreciate the humor of the art world, which is like, you know, Someone asked me once, they're like, what's the difference between trying to I run a wine mom gallery. Is it a gallery of wine moms? There's just a bunch of wine moms pinned to the wall. Like they're being I would see that. I would see a bunch of wine moms pinned to the wall like Christ. Someone asked me like, what's the difference between, I think this was an advantage because I didn't start trying to do comedy until my early 30s. Someone asked me, but what's the difference between being in the art world versus being in the comedy world? And I was like, fundamentally, not much. It's a bunch of people. They have the same, socially, we all have the same worries. Like, how often should I go to shows to support my friends versus how often do I need to like be by myself and do my own work? How do I belong? How do I prove that I belong? What level of participation and social interaction do I need in order to prove to myself and everyone else that I'm part of this community? Like, it's just everybody worrying about. Jack, I'm gonna tell you what I've thought about this. This is what the art world is, I think. The art world is a group of like 60 to 100 people tops that just exist in your mind. And they're different. It's a different group for every person, but they maybe overlap. It's just and a lot of them are in Europe, and that's just a group of people in your head that you've decided need to take you seriously.
Oh my God,
that's the art
backstage
world.
Looks so excited. I love watching Stephanie looks so excited about this conversation.
Okay, good. The art world is I mean,
Jack is referencing a meme here. Is the art world in the room? Yeah. It's like a person at the edge of a park, or no, it's a person talking to the therapist, and they're like, is the art room in the room right now?
I get
Meaning
it.
like, yeah,
but
you're crazy, and the art world isn't everything.
We're talking about the same thing. I think that's just the sad part is like the art world is just a psychic space more than anything, and kind of a social delusion. Also, I think meme making is a trauma response, so I'm not really up on the meme community. But no shade. I mean, actually, yes, I think making memes is a psychosis. I don't know.
So you never developed that skill, is what you're saying?
Well, no, I tried once. I made a meme and I felt so empty afterward.
That's why you keep making them, right? To try and fill that void. Keep going.
So Jack is part of like New Model. The New Models do not research Malou, and now wants you to draw the art world on a piece of paper for their blog.
Are you serious? Because I can.
Well, you can take anything as seriously or not serious or not.
Oh yes, please draw for us, please. Oh my gosh.
Draw.
Oh, okay. Eric says comedy is memes. No.
I think memes can be comedy, but I don't think I'm just not particularly interested in doing that or consuming that. It's memes becomes, it's such a shared language. It's such a, I could get it, just they have no relevance to my life. And the amount of time that you have to invest in memes just to understand the language and the references of memes is, I don't have time for that.
Right. Yeah. But it is like comedy, like I guess, and maybe you would define a good meme as a meme that doesn't require 20 layers of references to get to it. Right.
Honestly, but what makes a good meme kind of is that. That's why it's just sort of like, maybe this is just a thing that I don't need to be a part of.
Well, it's like the art world, right? 20 levels of reference to get to the thing itself, right?
It's rewarding, and so I understand that it's the same with jokes. It's the reward of recognizing a shared reference, and it's like the more references are piled on, the smaller the audience, but the more rewarding the laugh or the reaction is. That's always I guess this is why I have a thing against memes, because in comedy, live comedy, you're always trying to balance those two things of like, well, if I make the the deeper, more interesting joke, maybe less people are gonna get it, but it's gonna be a more rewarding reaction versus if I make a broader, cheaper joke, more people will get it and react, but it won't be like a really deep, fulfilling reaction.
Right. But you're also working within a much more complex framework than most comedians, where you're also saying, I could make them laugh or I could make them puke.
It's easier. I actually get a little nervous around the term performance artist because.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because for me, I feel like, and I talk to performance artists and they're like, oh, wow, well, I could never do comedy. That's so like vulnerable and risky. And I'm like, I can never do performance art. Because when you start thinking about, if I start thinking about that as art, then it's like opens up a million other decisions. And for me,
right. Yeah, totally.
If just being funny is the critical baseline, it's maybe harder, but it's simpler, and I'm going to complicate it anyway. Because,
yeah. Let's jump into some. I'm sorry, Alex. Did you want to ask?
Oh no, I have. We can also keep going like this. This is great. There's also often the idea, or we talk about like indie or smaller comics, or ideas or shows as being too off the wall for the mainstream. But you have mentioned in the past that mainstream comics, like seeing them bomb at smaller venues, sometimes gives you hope. If you're able to like talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, that was just part of me figuring out like the process of how stand-up comedy works, which I really had no idea. And in retrospect, I don't know, maybe it was the desperation of feeling trapped by the art world. I really surprised. I'd never been like a performer in any serious way before then, but I really surprised myself with how much I just was so eager to figure this out. And what's wonderful about stand-up comedy is that, it's a process that it's not a studio practice. Like you work out material by doing it in front of people. And no matter how, I guess if you're more famous or more seasoned, there's slightly less of a risk because you kind of like know what works or what doesn't generally. But anytime you're trying to write a new joke or do a new bit, then like it just sets the bar back to zero, and the audience may not like it. So for me, and there's a distinct advantage of trying to do comedy in LA, which is that I got to see a lot of really big comics try out or work out their material in like these smaller rooms, and seeing them like fail and have to work at it. It was encouraging because I realized, oh, this just is the process. There's no amount of me sitting alone in my room writing and then spitting out a perfect thing, which is what I do when I write, on paper. This was so exciting. So it's just a totally different kind of writing. It's the opposite of being alone and perfecting the thing over and over, and then you don't show it to the world until it's edited. It's like you have to just go do it. So it was helpful for me in realizing that like failure is part of it. Like you cannot get better at comedy if you're afraid to like be bad at it.
What about Zoom hecklers? That's happened to you, right?
Oh yeah, tell us about your Zoom hecklers from the pandemic.
I have a different relationship with hecklers than most people. I think some comics. In the live stream show, it's like, you can't get derailed by a heckler because you always have power. I'm the one with the fucking microphone. You are always gonna look like an asshole because you're interrupting the show. And if it really gets to a point, it's like, well, then a security guard is just gonna like pull you out of the venue. So, and in the live stream show, like I have even more control because then it doesn't even have to be confrontational. Literally with like, I can private message the host with like a click of a button, they're gone. So that opened up this is what I like to do at comedy clubs. If I got heckled on Zoom, the thing about most comics is like when someone heckles, the goal is to shut them down so you can get back to your jokes as quickly as possible.
Right.
It's like, ooh, my little jokes. Oh, they're so special. Ooh, I worked on this stuff so bad. Ooh, let me do it. I like to, if I'm in a good place, like just mentally, then to me it's more fun to just go into it. Like if someone's at a club, if someone's like drunk and yelling at me instead of like trying to shut them down so I can get back to my precious material. I'm just like, oh, what's going on with you? And then like, well, you're part of the show now. So it was just the opposite. The way to engage them, I feel like, unless they're being antagonistic, and most of the time it's just people getting excited and not having good manners, it's just to like double down and be like, oh, like what's going on with you? Like, why do you keep talking? Like, what? Now this is actually a dialogue. And if the audience thinks it's boring, it's because you're being an asshole and like sort of took over the show. How many hecklers are paid activists bankrolled by the Soros Foundation? I think this reminds me of when I was heckled by Jordan Peterson on a live stream.
Wait, no, really?
Am I joking?
I don't know with you.
Zoomber game. That's what I want to do. I want to do like a live stream nightclubs. That is like it's like very exclusive. You like just like lights and people going like this in a square, and it's like you can't join the meeting. It's password protected. These password protected live stream. Future Left have a lot of cultural cachet. Not everybody can have it.
Oh my god. Oh my god. That's for Paige, who's in Berlin right now and can't join us because everyone in Berlin's asleep.
Yeah.
I heard the secret is to the secret is to go to Berghain at like 2 p.m. on a Sunday. I'm serious.
Yeah, but no, what's happening there?
People are fucked up and dancing. It's like it
Really?
goes like 24/7.
I'm sorry, I'm like Elon Musk. I've never been. So
A friend of mine who's a director. He was in Berlin for like 3 months shooting a TV show, and he's like, I want to go to Berghain so badly, and he shared this long story about like how he wanted to have the right outfit, and he like asked the wardrobe department from the TV show to get him some cool Berlin looks, and then his friend was like, that's not, just chill out. Like, you're not gonna get in if they know that you put on like a Berghain costume, and that it's an energy thing everywhere, like in writing and comedy and clearly access to clubs. If they can sense that you have this like anxious, desperate need to belong, then it's sort of like, we don't need that. So she was like, chill out, just wear a regular fucking outfit and go have fun. And there's obviously, you can't film inside, but he had you have to show your Vax card and like the Zoom link. Correct Berghain Zoom link.
Oh, I see. So the 2 p.m. is actually the party from the former night anyways.
Yeah, it's like,
the same.
I don't know if it's actually going 24/7, but yeah, Stefan, you're right. Yeah, the dude just ended up wearing like t-shirt and jeans, whatever he normally just wears, and that's what
7-Eleven basically.
Yeah, and then you can't film at all inside. But he was like, afterward, he was like, I want to go, and it's like he goes, it was amazing. He was like, he just took a picture of himself coming out, just like absolutely skeezed out of his mind, covered in sweat, but like radiant because he'd been dancing for 7 hours straight. And he's like, I saw the piss goblin. I don't know what that is, but like that's exciting.
Yeah, we're lucky. Before we go, we're gonna have Stephanie come in, but I want to play a couple more of your clips for people. And this first one is you were on. So what's the deal with the Drew Barrymore Zoom show?
Oh yeah, this was crazy during lockdown. I say during lockdown specifically to talk about 2020, which is like when we mostly couldn't leave our homes. The Drew Barrymore show started like a YouTube channel. They were doing and they had like comedians do sets from home.
That's so cool.
And this was crazy thing. So I got an email from the producer, was like, hey, we want you to do like a Zoom set for the Drew Barrymore show. And it was crazy. So they had a PA come to my house with a mask and like set up their lights and shit in my living room.
Oh, really?
Oh
Wow.
yeah, it was
That's-
very elaborate.
That's
They-
insane.
They paid me some okay money and then had a P. I know this is what real TV. This is network TV money.
Yeah,
trying to do Zoom. So they paid. They had like a PA come put the whole setup in my house, and then the PA came back the next day to like pack it all up and take it away. And what was funny is like, oh, we're doing like a virtual comedy club, so we really want to make it seem like it's like a real comedy club. And I was like, well, that's fucking bullshit. So I was like, is this okay what I'm doing? And the whole thing was that they wanted comics to do a set and they were going to add fake laughter, and they had this like fake stage
I was
setup.
going to ask you about that, if that was real laughter or not.
No, it was all fake because this was all
Oh
like,
my
I was
God. That's so interesting because
it wasn't even live. It was like live to tape. I was just like performing the set for the producers, and then they like showed it on their YouTube channel later. And so I was like, this is, I mean, really, it's a precursor to what happened in the special, because I'm like, I don't like the whole live stream comedy trying to like pretend it wasn't on Zoom was tiring to me. Like I wanted to lean into the artifice of it. So that's why I did what I did. And I was surprised that they got it and that they liked it. They're like, oh, no, we love what you're doing. We love that we're putting so much work into trying to make this seem like it's not just pre-recorded, and you're completely undoing that by making this like doing this like messy thing with like your headphones and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it's like really like the tension between them trying to make it seem live and me pushing back and being like, no, this is all fake is what that was.
I just love that you shared the stage with Drew Barrymore. Yeah.
Me too. That was so surreal. And I'm like, hearing my
so
name
cool.
come out of her mouth, I was like, wow, like what a great moment. Like I would never thought I would get here. Like even like, 5 or 6 years ago when I was like doing open mics, I never thought I would be here. And it was so cool. And like, and I'm so broke. Like what is going on?
Yeah, I know. That's the weird thing. And she's your only connection to ET.
I'm only 1 degree removed from ET.
Away from ET.
I'm going to retire.
Okay, let me play this clip.
Hey, Mitzi, thank you so much for having me. I am so grateful to be here, recreating the magic of live comedy for you. You can, please, Mommy needs this so bad. I'm sorry, I had to put my kids in the pantry, but don't worry, I left them a pile of Honey Nut Cheerios. And I usually only save Honey Nut Cheerios for the weekends, but they're my angels, they're everything. They're 14 and 26, and I'm homeschooling both of them right now. Let's see, can you hear me? Is this it? Is this it? No, okay. Hold on, I think I got this. If I speak into these, does that work? Okay, I think here's what we're gonna do. Okay. Now you just listen through there, and then I'll do my jokes from here. I'm kidding. I know how these work. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I actually wanted to do something a little bit special today because I know it's
So good. Oh my God. I love like how you're still like, I love the connection between this and the first clip, because you're deconstructing the stage again, and that's so important. You're deconstructing the stage like you did in the first part, but you're deconstructing the Zoom stage. I have 10 headphones, 2 microphones, and I'm really uncomfortable now, so I'm going to put them up my nose. Like, how many people have probably actually done that,
I just like, we were all figuring out new technologies then, like Zoom, Zoom, and I've thought about this a lot. I wrote a whole pilot. We haven't talked about it all. We'll talk about it later. I wrote a pilot that's set in the art world, and it's basically just about and I've read a lot about like classic physical comedy, and that like early physical comedy, especially like Charlie Chaplin and in modern times, it's literally just about the conflict between like bodies and technology and how they don't fit together. Like so much slapstick is just like people not knowing how shit works. So every time to me, the funniest part of trying to do a Zoom show or a live stream show, I mean, we kind of went through this yesterday, is the whole, like, can you hear me? Is this good? And it's like, who's on first? So
Right.
I always thought it was funnier or
Right.
at least more fun, and instead of like trying to avoid that, like when things go wrong, like let's just go further. Let's get into it.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I really do. So also we have one last clip to play, and then we will transition to having our friend Stephanie to join us. So let me play this last clip.
Incredible.
That's something I want to tell you.
Yeah.
I think you're really funny.
Thank you.
I mean it. I mean, like, everything you say is so funny.
Thank you. You're
It's really
super
quiet.
Great. So,
You're really not going to say it back?
you know I don't like labels. I told you that when this started. Please don't make it weird.
I told my parents you were funny. Do your parents even know I exist?
That's not fair. Okay, my parents are from a different country. They have a really weird taste in comedy.
If you don't think I'm funny, then what are we doing? Oh, that's funny?
No, it's
I'm
not.
outta
It's
here.
not funny. Dan, I love you.
That is not what I asked.
Well, here, take this with you.
Keep it.
Oh my God. Throwing in the rubber
That-
duck was how do you modernize the rubber duck? I thought the rubber duck was no longer a thing. You were able to bring it in. I thought nobody would ever bring the rubber duck back in.
The rubber duck is like comedy prophylactic. Hold on. The funny thing is, with that bit,
Oh my God.
I have it. This is just in my apartment. It's kind of like a talisman. What that bit is about, really, that actor, comedian, he's a comedian, and there's few. It's basically about the joke of like someone being too hot to be funny. And I thought that in and of itself was very funny. So sort of like
That's a reference within the comedy world that like if you're too hot, you can't be funny.
oh yeah. I
Oh,
remember because I grew out my hair and I lost weight. I had like a glow up during 2020. And the first time I did it, as comedy was coming back last year and there people were doing outdoor shows, I did like April 2021. I did my first set in like almost a year. And it didn't go that great. It felt like a cotillion. It was like my coming out of like, I'm wearing like a little dress and heels and I'm like trying out this new like femme look as opposed to like my punky weird look that I had a couple years prior. And the set didn't go well naturally because I hadn't been on stage in like a year. And then this other comic came up to me afterward and he was like, "You're too hot now to bomb with dignity." Which is like a mental puzzle I'm still trying to unpack. Like what a strangely like heat-seeking backhanded compliment that's like really hard to follow. But it is a joke it's like so much about stand-up is like trying to, I don't know, connect with the audience, and it's a lot of self-deprecation, and a lot of people think they have to be self-deprecating in order to connect with the audience. So it's like being conventionally attractive is the barrier to that. I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, I heard that when you're doing comedy that you're trying to blend in.
Oh.
Like what you're supposed to like dress in a way where you don't seem like too much of a hipster or like too much of like
that. What's funny
like
is
like more of like a commoner.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is blending in is what I'm trying to do now. When I first started doing comedy, I had like short, spiky hair and I dressed really wild and I like my hair was like purple and pink and bleach blonde. And then I started, I literally grew my hair out just so I could like kind of get more like acting jobs. And then I am interested in that military grade. That is like CIA, like psyop negging. I've actually been like, now that I have a little bit distance from it, I'm actually really, really fascinated with the way that just like changing my appearance has affected my comedy. And the jokes haven't changed, but the way they are received are, and that involves a certain like calibration. I'm so interested in, I really want to look just like a normal lady, and it does change the reception, because if you come out in a wacky outfit with wacky hair, you're like signaling like, oh, this is a weird comedian who maybe does weird stuff.
Right.
And I think I have a lot more fun, especially in like a regular comedy club context, coming out in like a nice little outfit and seeing how, how much fun or how weird I can get. That's like a surprise.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. We're going to transition now to getting Stephanie in. Stephanie,
Hi.
how's it going?
Hi.
How are you?
I've been like loving this. You could totally kick me out. I would just prefer to watch Christine. I mean, I'm laughing.
Kick me out. I need a break.
We'll kick you out. Let's kick you out. We'll kick you out.
Okay,
Just
cool.
kidding. We're not actually going to kick you out.
Oh, man. Okay.
Please, you have to talk about your work.
Okay, before we bring Stephanie in, we definitely need to play this clip. It's just like a fun clip that I made Stephanie send me. So I'm going to play this really quick. Oh my God, I love that song. That song is so.
Wait. Ready for the club now. I want her back. Can you get her back?
It's all.
No one wants to see that. No one wanted to see that.
Oh, come on. No, that's one of my favorite songs from Fugazi, honestly. There's a record store in the town where I grew up called Waiting Room Records that's named after that song.
I mean, I love to dance. I sort of like lost that thread when I was younger, unfortunately, but it's like a secret thing for me. But I feel like the performance thing is also like a thing from when I was younger that I kind of had to abandon, but it's so much fun. So I dance as often as I can when I'm alone.
Yeah, no, I thought it was beautiful. Also I like seeing them side to side, like seeing the wildness. It's like some of us never really need to outgrow anything, or outgrow parts of ourselves, at least. With you, like outgrowing dance seems like it might be like leaving behind a really vital part of your wildness. Like you like sending me a message with these videos at like, I think it was like 6 a.m. your time or something like that. And you're like,
I think it was like 4 a.m. this morning, actually, because like I knew you asked for them and I kind of held off. And then I was like, you know what?
I'm always up. So it's okay. Yeah. And I was like, this is the type of and just talking to you in general, there's just like this wild kind of theme. That's why I liked when things come together, is like you both just seem like very down to earth, very wild, very real people. It's pretty rare in this world. I feel like
we're very similar. It's funny, when we were talking, we're like we get along really well. I mean, we didn't know each other like, well before, other than each other's work, but I like that you say that, and that you say that we're similar. I feel lucky that you would put me in the category with her. I was cracking up. You saw my face, right?
Oh my God, you were just like, yeah, the whole time you were just like, the whole time.
But my like favorite part of any, like, even like when you watch SNL or whatever, is like when they crack themselves up. Like I love watching other people laugh. It's like almost better than, you know what I mean? Like when someone cracks themselves up, like in a skit or an improv or whatever, it's so good. Like you can't keep a straight face. It's so good.
Yeah. There's a part of me that was trying to be really serious and deadpan. I'm trying to cultivate this part of me during that interview with her that I just couldn't do. So I feel like now we can kind of like shift the tone though too a little bit.
Oh no. Oh great. I'm gonna be the cool, thanks. Okay.
No, this is the Shakespearean technique of using comedy to shift into seriousness, right? I
mean, I guess that dark comedy is super important to my work, so for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So let me So for those that don't know who Stephanie is, I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on who she is.
Just dancer.
She
Dancer and novelist.
she's she's a dancer, novelist, also writer based in New York City. Her work has appeared in a bunch of places, just like Christina, but in Harper's, Art Forum, Texter Kunst, who they New York Times, basically all the same places that's Christina has. The New York Review of Books, Vogue, and interviews. Her debut novel, The Super Rationals, and was published with Semiotext, sorry, in 2020 at the event. Oh, this is something else. So you have a new book though coming out, and that's kind of like what is stemming this conversation. But it's called "I Fear My Pain Interests You," and it's on one of my favorite publishing houses. It's on Verso. So stemming your whole career, you've written. Is this your third book now?
Yeah, third book. Yeah.
So are you starting to feel like a writer finally?
No, I mean, like
Are you
I don't
more of a
think I'll ever consider myself that really. But I mean, it's cool to have. I feel really lucky, but I feel like also this is like kind of like a first book too in its own way, you know?
Oh, how so?
I don't know. It just feels like that. It's like, like that whole thing of like, you like, I don't know. I was just reading this new Duras that like she had disowned these books beforehand. Like I kind of like want to disown my first one, like you go through these phases where with a book, it's hard to like hide it. It's always there as the thing, one book, two book, three book. It's really hard to be like, or like in a work of art, you can suddenly disown that quite easily. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit harder when you have a book, I guess.
Yeah. But does this feel like the most Stephanie Cava, dancer, novelist, also bringing the Shakespearean vibe shift? Oh my God, Christina's commenting on here by yourself. I love that. Just going to the next level. Yeah, but so you've written 2 other books, but this one seems to be your most serious book. Is that part of the vibe shift for you? It takes a long time to kind of come into your own as a writer because it's kind of like a abstract category in itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was super young when the first one came out. It probably should have never come out. I don't know, like I wrote it when I was like 23, maybe 24. I can't like I don't know, I've like put it out of the back of my head.
And it's very early for a memoir as well, right?
Yeah, which is like kind of funny, and I've kind of started to see that more as like, it fits in like the whole realm of everything if you like put them all together, because that's so absurd. Do you know what I mean? That it's kind of funny. I mean, it is funny. So that was that. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever feel like, oh, I'm a writer. Like I'm kind of like that person though. Like, I'm the person who gets up at 4 a.m. and starts texting you. Like it's not gonna stop anytime soon,
Yeah, definitely. But when it comes to the super rationals and the shift to this current book, which I've been shorthanding, the shorthand has been Pain. What has been the transition in your mind in terms of you as a writer? The former book, you're talking a lot about the art world, and I haven't actually had a chance to read it yet. But can you tell us about the transition for you as a writer from that book to this book?
Yeah, I mean, they're very different actually. I mean, there's a lot of similarities that I won't bore you with, but I guess the biggest difference for me was I think I was really able to sort of go more into like this absurdist, surrealist kind of plot situation. It was an idea that I'd actually had before the super rational started. Like it was an article I had read about this disorder that I had saved and knew would become something. So there was like, there was a bunch of time in between that and the taking notes and the observing, and really sort of the genesis of the whole, the plot and what it came to. There's not so much plot to the Super Rationals. It's more, banter and like, you know, just kind of these like absurd moments. Nothing really happens, but that's kind of part of the point. Like, this one has a bit more of a structure and a plot. More characters, even though some of them are still undeveloped on purpose because they represent sort of these like brackets or sort of allegorical kind of things. Yeah, I think it was just, I mean, again, there's a lot of similarities, both and kind of on purpose too. Like both are narrators around a similar age with women with M's at the beginning of their name. Like there are a lot of little puzzle pieces too throughout both of them that fit together, and you kind of have to find. Like I like little games like Olympian things or like puzzles or words, like stuff like that I like too. So like they both kind of connect in that way.
Well, there seems to be a thread throughout your work, or correct me if I'm wrong, but where you kind of explore characters that are stuck within the cogs of these like messy, complicated, interconnected and interwoven pieces within culture industries. And I'm curious as to why, you explore that in particular and how that frames your work, maybe how you've grown up or your experiences there.
That's a really good question. And I think that pain is in a way more, actually someone said this in like a Snap review on like Instagram, I guess a reviewer who had, written about it, was that it is this kind of a satire of the celebrity and the culture industry, more so and more clearly in Pain, because it also involves, the music industry and the film industry, both, in separate strands. And I think that, they both books explore extreme worlds of extreme privilege that are intertwined with like the sort of, I would say maybe, I don't think there's a superlative term. Probably you could say like the worst aspects of the cultural industry. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly. I would have to think about how I would explain that. But for me, it was important to explore how difficult, I mean, a lot of the books are about these irreconcilable things, in terms of, contradictions and compromises in our value system and what we try and create and how we try and live, and, and people moralizing who shouldn't be and people who shouldn't be aren't, and all these different questions. And so for me, it's both of those worlds are, are to be criticized. They're very, you're exactly right. They're both very similar. I mean, Margot, the girl in Pain, is the daughter, and this is on purpose. She's like the daughter of, an American daughter of a famous jazz musician. I mean, the granddaughter of a famous jazz musician, and then her mother was a punk musician, and then her father was, and then he sold out, and they got a divorce, and there's this whole story about image and optics and love and all the ways they should and shouldn't go together. And then, the Super Rationals obviously is a bit more simple and like, banging you over the head with it. But does that answer your question a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have
Okay.
from the audience, which I think I know, but I'll let you answer. Are the books part of a larger cinematic universe, or is there any context in that sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people keep saying, "Oh, this is the best movie I've ever read," or it's so cinematic, or it's like a film, or and I feel like they are both part of the same universe in the way that I just like can't sort of take away. For me, it's more of like this ecstatic thing. Like it's also very intuitive when I write. It's not so, again, it's not always about plot or plotting it out. So they are this like cinematic, the way the flashes that I see, the details that I see within myself, within, when I'm trying to explain something. So for sure, they're part of a same, cinematic universe. And there are moments on purpose in both that kind of fold over or make nods to each other. I kind of like those kind of silly things. You know what I mean? When did you notice one of them in the book? I guess maybe not, because you didn't read the Super Rationals.
No, we didn't get that one. But I read
okay.
about it, and I read enough about it to feel like there was definitely some continuity there for sure.
Yeah, there are some jokes throughout both of them that are jokes about myself, jokes sort of making fun of myself, making fun of my other work, making fun of the, a lot of it is like, again, back to the comedy thing. Unfortunately, I know I'm not Christina funny, but there's a lot of humor is really important to me. And a lot of it is like turning an eye back on myself, which goes back to your first question about these culture industry scenes or whatever. Because it's also very funny, right? I'm writing it in that context as well.
Yeah,
It only came out because of the culture industry or whatever. So
do you think that's something people are not aware of enough, or like, do you think in this day and age that people still have that that rose-colored glasses view of what these industries are? Is that why you try to show a more gritty undercurrent to things, or do you think people know but they still want it anyway? How do you feel about the current state of these
I don't think I really want to be that judgmental in any of my work. I'd rather like just sort of present the parts that I see, I guess. So for me, it's more about presenting two different things at the same time, which which is something that you can do when you're writing that is sometimes more difficult to do in other forms of art or critique in a way. I mean, that's a longer conversation, but I like I guess maybe one would say that you could do it most effectively in film, and maybe that's why I write cinematically, so to speak. But I like to present two things indirectly that you're kind of have to ingest at the same time, whether it's two ideas. I'm really into this like self-canceling, contradictory, not moralizing, but like also looking into why and when we do and how we do and when we don't, all those kind of things.
What do you mean by self-canceling? Is that
I don't mean in like the term of like cancel.
No,
Sorry,
like-
did I interrupt you?
No, that's fine.
Oh, my question was, what do you mean by self-canceling? Is it a form of like self-censor, or is it a way?
No, and I didn't mean it like in the term. I guess that's a bad word choice because of like cancel culture and everything. I mean, there's a joke about that actually in the book, but I just mean sort of this like reflexive thing, or like when something sort of like eats itself, or like you can't really reconcile the two sides, and there's a lot of impossibility like that. I think living in the sort of systems that we live in and we create, and it's the same thing of like publishing not being the same thing as writing, like we were talking about. I have a tiny publishing practice, and what you choose to put out is different than writing the thing, right? And there's a lot involved in that and what it means and what comes out around that. And I'm just like interested in all these things at the same time.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about small press. What type of works do you keep an eye out for? What do you tend to be drawn to when it comes to other people's work?
I have to say, I would love to be finding more new things and new voices and things like that. But I am right now, most of the publishing in longer form I've been doing has been works in translation, which is super important to me. And it has been for a long time. I remember once hearing the numbers of how many works in translation are on the American. Actually, again, it's kind of funny now that you bring this up. It is like another culture industry, sort of, what do you call it, black hole. But like in America, I think it's like the smallest percentage of.
Hey.
Please. No, please. We're live. Please. Thank you.
I want to join.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Don't be. Look, if he wants to join, he's welcome. You can go.
It's okay. You said hello. They saw you. Please go upstairs now. Thank you. Sorry. Oh my God.
Translation, being a translator. There you go.
Yeah. Wait, I'm looking at what take both pills and yeah, exactly. I just think that in the American system, there's such a small percentage of books in translation on the market if you compare it to in other publishing practices. And to me, perhaps this comes from the fact that I didn't grow up only in New York. I grew up, in different parts of the world at different times. I think it's really important to read works in translation because of the storytelling, the norms, the mores, the the phrasing and all these things. And, and it's, you can't be expected to read it in a language that's not your own sometimes. So being able to help enable a translation and facilitate, the printing of the translation, the distribution of the translation, the availability of a translation is important. What's more important is that people read them, but I think it's really important, especially for children. Now that gives us a purpose to the madness, to read more works in translation and stories from, not simply from, again, the industry, the machine, the same background. Does that make sense?
Sure. Do you still often do your own translating?
Of my books into other languages, do you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't do my own. And I don't do the ones that I publish either usually. I'm also really into, like, for example, we'll put the name of the translator on the cover of the book, which is something that wasn't done that much as it should be until recently. I think it's good to, like, promote translators and celebrate their work. It's a very difficult job that's, like, really underappreciated. And I'm not very good at it either. So I'd rather have someone who's, like, really good at it do it.
You are muted. You're very muted. Come on.
Oh, does that work?
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So can you tell us your experience of, I guess, your early experiences with art, and how, because this conversation kind of reminds me of what we were talking about off camera, where we were talking about, like, how you're an expat and how your parents used to bring you, kind of like drop you off at, like, art museums, and how now it's interesting how these, like, experiences show up in the world, because, like, now you're not in the art world, you appreciate other languages. You lived in, was it France?
Yeah. I grew up there for a lot of my childhood.
How long were you in France for?
Like 5 or 6 years, but, like, from the age of 11 on.
So it was really impactful for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Japan for a summer, and I think about it all the time, like, let alone 5 years.
Yeah.
So where, like, did that have did you learn French when you were there, and did that have some kind of impression on you about the multilingual universe,
Yeah, for sure. I think it also maybe also was the seed of this idea of, I remember explicitly, like, reading or being told over and over that we have to read all different news sources. And this was, like, a long time ago, and in terms of getting the news from whatever English sources we could get, but also the other ones that were translated. And that was something I had not heard of as much, or I remember learning that or believing that in a young age, and also reading or following, which I think people are scared to do on social media and scared to do in general, or, like, just knowing all the different sides of things. And perhaps that's why I'm so interested now in, like, presenting things that aren't necessarily, what I believe, or aren't necessarily what I think is, the value system I would want, but just putting it out there to be seen in the form of fiction, and then, sort of, like, experienced in that way.
Stefan Kostic says, my wife grew up very poor, but was this very wonderful artistic soul. She went to Japan as well. Still tells me about the trip.
That you can't wait to go. Cool. Tell us about it. Come back.
Yeah, please. Yeah, totally. But now, but also you were writing about art a little bit because of these, like, forced experiences as well as a young kid. You were doing art reviews, is that correct?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it happened more naturally. I think it was also, like, because I was just, like, it just was more of a natural thing for me to do than other kinds of journalism I had tried and failed at. Do you know what I mean? Not that I'm very successful at writing reviews either, but it just was a universe and, like, people that I understood, or felt like felt that I could look into better or easier in the different ways that I knew how. And I'm also, my thing has always been interviewing people.
Oh,
and, like, so that was always an interesting. Sorry?
So is it weird to be interviewed now? We've been.
I know, I'm trying not to like flip it too much. I always end up doing that. I have like all these questions I want to ask you guys. And
I know when you came on camera earlier, you were asking us questions, and I was
I
like,
know I was, wasn't I? Oh my God, I did it again. I know. Sometimes I'll go to dinner and people are like, "Can you stop?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm just interested. Like it's not meant to be like." I really can't help it. It's not meant to be some kind of like fact-finding mission. It's like natural curiosity, I guess.
Be yourself on this show. We don't read it any sort of way. We invite whatever happens.
Exactly. No, that's really cool. So I think part of you coming here was to talk about your book, but we're really careful to talk about kind of some of the spoilers. So Margot, I don't know, Alex, I don't know if you want to bring this up, but Margot, I don't know how to bring this up without giving away anything, but Margot seems to have this experience during this narrative, and she has a condition, if that's okay to say.
Yeah, she has a pain disorder. I think we can. Yeah, she can't feel physical pain. Yeah.
Right. Is this so? As I was reading this, is this in any way based off of your experiences as a person or experiences you've had? Is this going back to the autobiographical aspect of your former writing? I'm curious about that.
I don't think so. I mean, I have trouble sometimes with these kind of questions because I feel like everything is obviously within a writer is from something. Do you know what I mean? That's been sort of either transposed or made into, but it's not autofiction at all. If that was like, like that's a question I often get, and it's not autofiction.
I was asking. Yeah.
It's not specifically like it's not specifically about any kind of physical ailment I have, or for me, It was more about this idea of examining, again, it's the same thing as we talked about before, examining pain where there is no pain. Like, how do we look at something by looking at its absence?
Right.
Which is what, and also the idea of, how to use it work in terms of intention if you have a pain disorder and you're going through emotional abuse or something like that.
Right.
Like I wanted to think about all these kind of things.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, as somebody that is not super familiar with your former work, but knows about this book, it seems like we are working within a cinematic universe. A lot of this, a lot of what you're referencing or what you're looking at does come from experiences with people, as you said earlier, from 1970s era celebrity culture. But also there's this really rich kind of poetic nature and affect to what you're sharing with us, right? So that's why my mind automatically goes to like, is this personal? Because it seems so personal, like everything you're kind of like struggling with as you're listening to Margot, for instance, right? But
it's funny.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's funny that you say that, because then I think of what you guys talked about before in terms of like how to be successful as a comedian or anything. They say there was that whole moment when you guys were talking about not trying too hard or not wanting anything too much or not, and I think there is something to be said about when you're writing something, you can feel I guess maybe you feel the intentionality or like what was going on. Like I wasn't really trying to write this thing. I was trying to figure something out. Maybe is that what you mean? Like at the same time as
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you were like Deleuze always talked about how writing was a discovery process. It wasn't what you were like. The typical understanding of writing is that you are writing a story, that you have a certain knowledge and you're trying to impart upon the audience or the students or whatever your aim is. But in your case, you are exploring like a type of emotion that is very real. There's something where like you read it though and you get lost, and you've read like half of the book and you almost forget that you've been reading. There's something where like my typical perception with reading, where I am using the Fellini technique. Fellini always has this technique where when you watch a film, you are both watching it and being aware of how it's made, right? So when I'm reading your book, it's interesting because my analytic brain kind of turns off, and it makes it hard for me to think about it critically. You know what I mean?
That's so funny. It's weird because people have been saying that to me in this strange way, which I think is kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, I guess when I wrote this book, it was also like a bit of an exorcism. Like it wasn't like I was like plotting out the thing and then, you know, and I knew exactly what was going to happen and I wanted this to be the feeling. It was literally an exorcism of all the things, and maybe you're feeling that as well.
Oh my God. I love that.
So I mean, that to me, and like the intuition for me about it was part of the process a bit more than even anything, again, structural or critical. And maybe that's also why it's so cinematic, because it's not structurally sound.
Yeah, especially with the way that the dialogue is set up. I thought that was really interesting. It was described by one reviewer as like a staccato beat that carries the air of a memoir, which I think is like, so like you can't help but sort of feel this rapid fire and like get immersed in it in a certain sense because of the way that it's set up.
Yeah, I think also there's like a disassociative quality to some of it, which is kind of interesting too, that people have told me.
Narrative enema. I think you were also asked earlier, we had a question about how you were able to find your own community. This is the C word again, but how were you able to find
community derogatory?
What was the question? What was the context of the question? Like, which community? Like, how was I able to find my writing community, or what was the question exactly?
I believe that's what they mean, art or writing community, but I'm sure they're going to come back in a second and clarify.
Are you there?
It was Stefan Kozik, but I think they were just talking about like this generalized community, kind of like what we were saying earlier. Like, there's not a specific community. Like, we like to envision a specific community. Like, we like to think like, oh, the art world is this, or like the writing world is this, but it's actually just like a bunch of people that we connect with personally, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why my response was I was like, I don't think I have. I mean, I'm hard pressed to even ever feel comfortable, I guess, saying I'm part of I don't know, I feel like I'm pretty much a loner when I'm doing my writing work.
That's something we've been commenting with Christina, talking about her experience during the pandemic.
Yeah. Can we bring her back soon? I miss her.
Oh no, we're about to bring her back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Good.
We're about to bring her back. Yeah.
We're all gonna talk together.
We're past time with you as well. We've been doing this for 30 minutes.
We're always past. We should stop saying that. We just keep going until it feels right.
I love that. Is there anything?
Oh, wait. Okay. I'm so excited. I've been listening, but I want to say, first of all, Stephanie and I've made compromises in bifurcating my practice between writing and performance. We do not write for all the same publications. Stephanie writes. I've never written for the New York Times or Vogue or the New York Review of Books. I would love to just leave that hanging there and assume that we do.
But you're
I'm not sure if this was meant as a compliment or
no, it is a compliment. I think you were reading her biography and sort of like, oh, she writes for, and we're listing all of your great bylines. And we're like, oh, same places as Christina. And I'm like, no, you write for so many more places than I do.
No.
Listen, I caught it, but as a good teammate, I didn't.
But what I appreciated so much that you showed that video of you dancing, because I do that all the time.
Right?
I have
that's where the
vulnerability. I'm a performer, and to me the most vulnerable thing I could think of was actually post like videos of what I do alone, and like when I'm actually alone in my apartment, which is like I dance.
I've never seen.
And I have privately. I think Stefan said something about like writer and dancer. We have all these labels for what we do, and I've always thought about like, should I just say I'm an artist, but okay, writer, actor, art critic, comedian, but like privately, like the foundation of what I do out in the world when I'm alone in my apartment is writing and dancing.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
That's
This is
like
a show of
those are like the practices that sort of lead to everything else, and some of it comes out as writing, but like
Do you know I wrote there was this whole, this whole story about Louis Fuller and sort of those videos of the Lumiere brothers did with like all the cloths dancing, or like there's a whole story, and it was actually in Tom McCarthy's book, The Making of his most recent novel, where he talks about it in the dancing in the context of writing. And there are so many examples throughout art history as well, which I guess could be a whole nother conversation for us, of dancing informing writing and vice versa, or showing up in places.
Yeah, I it's so encouraging because like I've written like one small book and I'm so eager to do the next one because it's hearing you talk about like, oh, that first book, I wish I could forget it. I'm not that.
Oh my God.
I feel the same way. It's like, I'm not that person anymore. I need to like hurry up and finish this next book so I can get it out and people don't think I'm this person anymore.
I love this idea that you can just own a book like that, I feel like you have to be much, much bigger and better of a writer to have it, like the fact that Duras was able to say it. But I love this idea that you can, like an artwork, disown a book, like a child.
Yeah, I don't want to disown it. It just made me excited that like, yeah, this is the process of being a writer. And I love that you like, it was funny. I was having the same experience that Matthew was talking about, where it's like, it was especially the super rationals and both of them. I was so into the book that I'm like, oh wait, I had to like think for like, wait, I have questions. Or I was just so having the fucking literary experience. It was hard to get out of it.
Exactly.
And this is what makes it, sorry, I want to say something incendiary, not fucking autofiction. It's a good literary construction. And that's what art is. We're using the artifice of our constructions to get a deeper emotional truth. And it's so well constructed. That's how I was able to just like actually experience the emotional truth of it. And same is fucking with acting and comedy. The less I get attached to my own story, and it happens I cry in the comedy special, and I'm like, that's so weird. I would never let myself cry on stage, but in a way it's like, because I was being more performative about the material, I was having a more authentic emotional experience. And I love that about your writing, is it just gets into what makes novels good, which is how psychological they can be. Like, that's the whole point why we have, like, there's a reason why novels still exist and we still read them. They do things that like cinema can't do fully, that live performance that, you know what I mean? And I think you take advantage of that, and that's why they're so fun. They're just fun, good to read.
That's super important to me. Thank you. I think I like the idea that they're the fun exorcism kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's the cinematic exorcism that's happening without us realizing it, though.
Yeah, and that you can make a book, and like cinematic is the word that gets used a lot in how books are made, which is totally valid because it's how we've been. It's also a big part of just a literature, like media diet of like being a person. But you do it in a way that still just like takes advantage of like what a novel can do. It's cinematic, but it's also just does everything that a novel can do that a movie can't. And we talked about this. There's certain like, especially in I Fear My Pain interviews, there's these like jumps in time that are so funny. It literally operates kind of like a jump cut in a comedy where it's like, she said not to date the director, and so I said, no, I will not date the director. And then the next chapter starts, so I was in bed with the director. It's how like, and you just immediately fill in like everything in between. And it reminds me of like, I also do, like, I've been trained as a clown, which like informs my comedy a lot.
Oh my God.
What does that even mean to be trained as a clown?
Like I do clown work with a class. Took a lot of clown classes with like a classically trained French clown, and that really like that changed my comedy more than anything.
Is that like similar to miming? Is that
It's
like
not. No, it's not miming. Like it's like clown as a philosophy and as a discipline of like it's basically deconstruction and like vulnerability and presence. And it's like it's not like circus clowning at all. It's like a hardcore kind of weird performance philosophy. But my point was that and it's a little bit anti stand-up because it's a lot about stillness and tension. And it reminded, even just like the way things were jump in the book reminded me of like, you know, it's the lines between the lines. Like you take these big jumps in time, like skip over so much, but in a way that was like very intense. Seems very intentionally or smartly about like allowing the reader to fill in those spaces.
Stefan says people say cinematic when they mean visually coherent, transmissible, rather than style.
Almost. I also just love, it's just sort of, there's like literary tropes that sort of mirror cinematic tropes, but like they're literary. And it reminded me of like one time my clown teacher said something about like sort of paring down performance, paring down your act, and that like stand-up is a lot of talking and you're trying to explain yourself, and clown is more about being yourself and just not worrying so much about the audience catching up with you. And he said that you need to leave space for the audience to dream around you, which is like such a thing that like poetry and literature does. Like you're not going to say every detail. It's like you just have to leave the right spaces for the reader to fill in. And that's what's great about like fiction or novels in general.
It's funny. Someone said about my first book, the unspeakable one. No, but that for a memoir, it says surprisingly little about me at all. And I kind of love that. And so maybe that's like what you're saying as well, and how that found its way into that form.
Yeah, or just like, yeah. And just that even as like like I know that you said it, it's true that the second book, A Fear My Pain, is a little more plot driven, but that like, you know, you don't want it to read like a transcript either of action. So there's just like the right places where there's
clown build. Clown build. I'm Googling clown college BRB. Oh my God.
I studied with
this is what you're going to do. Everyone's going to leave this being in clown college, Christina.
I studied with a man named Phil Burgers, who studied under a famous French clown named Philippe Gaulier, who has a clown school in Paris that I would like to go to before he dies. Philippe Gaulier is very old. But yeah,
yoga, you have to like find the origin. You have to go back to the original.
You have to go back to the source. But
oh my God.
Honestly, I think everyone should take a clown class. I think it's people. I've never seen more people cry in a comedy class than I have in a clown.
Wow.
It's interesting because you were talking about how memes are a form of trauma, some form of configuration of the word trauma and things.
Memes are a trauma response. Memes
are
a trauma response for not being in the community.
Of the clown community, you mean?
Any community. I have this thing like when I see art world. It's I mean, like I'm half joking, but I don't like when I see like memes that are such just like closed system of shared language in order to make these like really, really weird inside jokes, especially memes about the art world. I think it starts out as satire, but it's what I read underneath all of that pith and satire is like, they're a way to just, it's like usually the people who run these like art meme accounts are like in a way disingenuously auditioning for the art world, you know? Because then I think this period is over, but there were so many art meme accounts that love to make fun of like the language of the art world or the social conventions or the mores. But then like they'd finally get enough attention to like get a review and freeze or some shit. And then they were so fucking proud that their work is now being taken seriously by the institution that they're supposedly like, you know, being incendiary against.
It's another self-canceling culture industry example.
Yeah, I think institutional critique is very self-canceling in that way. So I don't like. I'm very touchy around the words like satire and institutional critique, which is what some people like to say about my comedy, depending on the context. And I'm like, Sure. I think having fun is the highest form of institutional critique.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think for some industries, like for instance, like the architecture industry, like having a meme account is a way of coming out in certain ways, like with certain types of knowledge. Like the meme account Dankloid, right, is within the architecture industry, and like, yeah, it's an inside thing, but there's this, there's this edge that exists, like in terms of like quote being edgy between allowing people to understand the problems of the architecture industry, whether or not you're in it, while also being inside of it. So like I follow that account because I love how they dunk on architects, but I'm not an architect. I have some friends that are architects, but I love to follow that for that that type of institutional critique. And
I follow lots of meme accounts.
Yeah, no, I think like meme accounts, like the real institutional critique is having fun and being yourself.
That's what we don't want to admit. It's actually that easy. It's that simple.
That's so good. No, but like what I'm saying is like it might come from a place of like insider and in group, out group, but it can also be from a place of turning the in group to the out group, to letting more people in as well,
This is true. It can be like a little pressure valve or a doorway. And like it's like almost a form of
the real critique is the friends we made along the way.
It just feels like there was a period where, and I kind of unfollowed them. There seemed to be a period where like there was so many like vitriolic art world meme accounts, and it just felt like Stockholm syndrome, because it was just like shitting on a specific perception of this institution or this like culture industry in a way that was like suddenly got walked back as soon as they were recognized by the art world. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's all of us. I don't know. Maybe that's just a little more like whatever, this is live stream. How often have I talked shit on SNL privately to my friends, and now I'm like, I really hope I get on this season. I'm gonna work really hard on my tape. Ooh, like help me, Daddy, bring me, please. Ooh, put me on the thing.
Oh, you'll be on SNL eventually, I'm pretty sure.
Did you heard that you made me think of it when I was laughing so hard. You heard when you were backstage before. You made me think of it because like I always love when they crack themselves up, and that's like what I felt like I was doing, like watching myself crack up at all of the things you were saying. It made me think exactly of that. I could totally see that.
The crack up is such a specific thing, and I thought about that because like people do love it, like it's fun.
Oh, but when it's real, when you crack yourself up, it's amazing.
That's also like the balance, because like it's so beautiful to watch. Even even when you're watching stand up with you, to see a comedian who's like doing their act and they're doing really well and everyone's having a good time, but a moment when like something just like unexpected happens and they crack, it's so beautiful and it's so much more like a funnier laugh. And then there's also the potential for that to be abused when like there's a thing that certain bad comedians do, which is like they rely on the crack up. And
oh,
it's like
interesting.
It's not a thing you
can
force. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there was a story that I saw this interview with Tracy Morgan, because when Jimmy Fallon was on SNL, he was known for cracking up a lot, and it was really sweet and fun. And Tracy Morgan in an interview talked about how when you're trained in improv, like it's like a thing. It's like you can't will it to happen, but when it happens, it's great. And he talked about that, that he felt that like the crack up was like a cheap way of getting attention, like in a scene or in an improv game, that if you weren't the center of attention, if you started cracking, then the attention would be on you. And so he sort of felt like Jimmy Fallon was doing it on purpose because he wasn't like a main cast member yet. And then he like,
whoa.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of people who felt like, oh, well, he did it too much. And I think like they had a confrontation where Tracy Morgan was like, you will not crack up when we are in a scene together. It was very much like, this does not happen. And apparently that worked. And so like Jimmy Fallon never would crack when he was in a scene with, this is all lore. I don't know if it's gospel, but it's very interesting. I don't disagree. Like I love when people crack up. And it's also so hard to not take that to heart and then be like, ooh, it's not a thing you can plan for either. Be like, ooh, I hope I crack up tonight and connect with the audience. Like,
Can I ask you a question about when you're writing like a screenplay or a teleplay and there's improv involved, what is that process like? How does that take shape for you, or do you not, do you think of them separately?
No, there's totally room for that. It's two-way. I just wrote a pilot this year, and this is the first time I've ever written a script. But I have written in some TV rooms where like it starts with improv and then you kind of like write the script from that. So it's vice for me, as I know it. It's not like you can. It's very hard to. It's almost like what you do on the page. Like it's very hard to. It's very hard to like start writing a script and say this is where the improv goes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure
like,
how.
You're just exploring, and so it's the same thing as like exploring on the page versus like exploring by playing with another person. Like usually some writers rooms, all writers rooms are different, and I'm trying to get work in more like structured rooms that are about writing. My agent has said this. He's like, you got to start writing this shit down. He's like, that's how you're gonna get. He's like, that's what a script is. It's what you do on stage, but you got to write it down if you want more jobs. And I said, okay. But a writer's room for like Eric Andre's show and for this other show that I did, it's like, it's so much fun. You're just playing. There's usually like some sort of structured guidepost of like improv or playing. And then there's like a writer's assistant in the corner who's trying to write it all down. Yeah. Some writers' rooms can just be like a bunch of comedians hanging out and riffing. And then there's like two guys in the corner trying to write it all down. And then, you know, later still the writers are going to like organize all of those notes. It's almost like same as, you know, you're brain dumping on the page and then you organize it later, right? It's like organizing notes. Yeah. But I've never been able to do it. I don't think I can. I'm learning how to do screenwriting right now. And it's like a totally different thing. It's very, right now it's like writing or just like working on fiction or like a fun thing for myself feels like a break from trying to screenwrite.
We have a question here. Alex, do you want to read it?
I'm wondering about how, in your experiences, communities might look different depending on discipline. So stand-up versus clown versus novel versus writing, blah, blah, blah.
That's a great question.
I guess the sheep. Well, we also did talk about how community might not really exist in a.
Well, I would just double down on what I said before, is that it's mostly it's pretty much the same. It's like whether it's people worrying about whether or not they actually belong. And the only thing that I found is in this, because stand-up is such a public art form and that everyone's working in front of each other and figuring out their things in front of each other. It's a little more, maybe I know this is hard for people to swallow because of how, like, you know, stand-up is perceived in popular culture, but it's pretty empathetic. I found a lot of like sweetness and community in the stand-up world, maybe in a way that I haven't even had in the art world. Because when people talk about the evils of the comedy of stand-up, it's like they're talking about like 4 or 5 of the like the biggest comedians in the world. And for the most part, I feel like the comedy community has been pretty supportive and like open in a way that the art world isn't. Or maybe it's the art world, everyone's still a little bit more guarded about needing to be perceived a certain way. But you know, in stand-up, everyone's on stage talking about their problems and their lives. So you can't really hide that stuff as well.
I have a question. This kind of goes back to Stephanie's work with the Super Rationals, but we talked about earlier, and Christina talked about this when we met earlier as well, about the ways that the art world has become outdated, like a type of antiquity of sorts. Can you guys talk about that for people that maybe are not in the art world, like myself, and why you feel like there's certain aspects of it that have been outmoded by other culture, you know?
I hadn't thought about this as it relates to Stephanie's work.
Question.
Well, because I thought when I was doing like just art criticism, and I was in that flow of like going to openings every weekend because I needed to like pitch a certain number of things. There's something that felt almost like very old timey, like old New York or like Victorian about.
Ooh, interesting.
You'd run into people and they would literally call it, like I'd run into other writers, they'd call it doing the rounds. Like, are you doing the rounds this weekend? Meaning like, are you going to go to all the openings? I'm like, who the fuck talks like that in this day and age?
Is that like the 1970s Art World Cinematic Universe of the Stephanie Cava Cinematic Universe?
I just felt like that there's something almost like so antiquated about certain social mores of the art world in terms of like studio visits and going to openings is kind of this analog to just like being an old timey Victorian society person and being like, we must do a visit.
Wait, cut to. We were joking before about this, but that part in your book where you were like, I can almost quote it directly. I'm grateful for people who post on Instagram because then I don't have to go to the openings.
Oh, yeah.
Or am I getting it wrong? What was it exactly? You know
I'm grateful for people who post like when artists post like too much of their like work in progress, then I feel like I don't even need to see the thing in the gallery.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I love that part.
Yeah, I love that part too.
But it's true because that's why I have maybe you feel the same way, but I feel like I'm constantly negotiating my own relationship with like privacy, because in one sense, you always need to be online to remind people of your thing out there or that you exist. And yet if you do it too much, then I don't think it really entices people to engage with the actual work. Or maybe that's just a fear I have. I don't.
Right.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I know that makes sense. Yeah.
But I thought there's something that works so well with like, and I mean this, there's something like the 19th century was like, the height of the novel that was like the novel's fucking kick-ass age. And I think the way you write about the art world just like really takes advantage of that. It all gels because the art world is almost old-fashioned in a way.
That's such a good point.
And like, and that's why like using that as a subject matter is so rich. How much is too much, right? Being cool and getting people. Well, Stephanie and I were talking about this, like, just like doing like I worried about for so long about being cool or being with the right group of writers or group of comedians or group of artists, and I feel like it's more recent than I would like to admit that I just like started just caring more about liking what I do and taking care of myself. It's also that stupid and simple.
Right. That makes sense. I think Stefan has
Dickens Club.
That's so good. This is the Dickens Cloud soundtrack. Okay, no more Dickens Cloud.
No more Dickens Club.
Oh my god, these comments are so. I'm terminally uncool.
But now that's cool to say. You gotta say something else.
Yeah, our world is in the history the way that classical opera is from a certain period of time. New visual culture is happening elsewhere. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think it has to be, but socially it is. It's almost like the social, which is the most interesting thing about it. Like the social relations of the art world are always like lagging behind the aesthetic interest. I was having this conversation with my neighbor who's an actor, guy who lives behind my house, and we were talking about like, are movies going to even be a thing in 10 years? Like, what are we doing? And he was like, I think that people will watch. I think like film or cinema is just going to be like a cute, outdated form like ballet or opera.
Right. But also like Instagram is just like the LinkedIn for the art world, right?
Yeah.
It's like we condemn like the business culture of, formal corporate world, but then it's also taking on its own structures. But then there's like subcultures within that exist where people are like, you know, they're cultivating their own authentic alt version of it, right? Like having a live stream and talking about your art, you know, in a sense is like maybe its own type of privilege, or like, you know, having a certain page like, I'm trying to think of, like Dis, you know, do you guys know Dis?
Yeah.
Like having Dis share your work, like they won't share a lot of different types of people's work, but that's like a type of gallery now. Like it's just that things are always taking on new forms. It's not that these kind of hierarchies have gone away. It's just that they've taken on new forms that are harder to recognize from a traditional standpoint, right?
Yeah. Things have just changed so much. Like obviously, Stephanie, you've been writing forever. And I don't know if this happens where like people ask you for advice and I don't even know what to say, because 10 years ago,
Really?
like
That's so
trying to be published or figuring out how to start writing is so different from how people do that today. It's not like Substack or anything existed.
That's very true. I mean, when I try and be careful when people ask me like how, you know, what to do to get published, I'm always like sort of worried that I want to be like first, because I feel like a lot of the time, and I did this too, like when you're young and you're like, how do I get published, rather than like, how do I find the time or get down to the right, like we were saying before about getting to the work. So I'm always want to be careful, and I'm always like, but have you actually done, like, what do you have ready? Like you know what I mean? Like there's a stage in between or whatever.
What I've noticed, and I can sense this just being a sensitive person, 90% of the time when someone is like, I want to pick your brain, or how do I get published, or how do I write, they're just like asking permission to be a writer. You just have to be like,
That's
you
a very
already
good
are.
point. Yeah.
You are, like, it's okay. You like, the only thing that makes you a writer is writing, whether or not someone sees it. So just do that a bunch more, and like something will happen. I like when someone asks me a very specific question, like, can you read this thing I wrote? And this is what I want to know, versus like, how do I get published? That's like, you're asking something that you're afraid to actually ask. That is so true, and I agree, because you know, I agree with everything she says.
Oh my
People
God,
don't give her enough credit, you know.
I can't believe that she endorsed the loser, like second place mayoral candidate Caruso. That's so.
That was very well. This is just a tangent about the LA mayoral election. That was very encouraging, because that guy spent so many millions of his own money on ads.
Was it 20 or 40 million? I can't remember.
$40 million on ads, and he still got second place.
What a loser!
I was worried, because I would be in the laundromat doing my laundry, and just every commercial break, just seeing this asshole on TV, and I'm like, I hope people know that there's other people in the race.
Yeah, I mean, Karen Bass got second place, or no, she's first place now, actually.
Yeah, thank God.
I think she was second at first, and then I'm from LA. Just for those listening that don't know, that's how Christine and I know each other. But then it's interesting, because like if people, or specifically Karen Bass, if she starts to pay attention to the policies that Gina Viola was, you know, giving attention to, like for instance, like the police issues that Karen Bass overlooked in the primary. There, for instance, was a mayoral debate that happened, and the leader of Black Lives Matter was taken out for being at the event, you know, because she didn't have a ticket. But they basically took her out. I don't know if anybody saw this, but they took her out like she was like an animal. You know, they like animal welfare came, and like they all picked her up, and they had her legs and her arms and like dragged her out. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It was.
I appreciate activists pushing those buttons that expose the like they're just the absolute savagery that's underneath this very thin veneer of like social convention.
Right. Yeah, no, it is yeah, exactly. And then at the same debate, you know, all of these candidates are saying like, oh, we want more police. We need more funding for police. And Stefan keeps on commenting. I love Stefan.
Everything at the same time, they're great. These are great comments.
These are great. Yeah. Yeah, basically like if Karen Bass just maybe backed a little bit away from like the pro police thing, she'd probably be winning by a lot more. Anyways, you wrote an article about this in the LA Times, right, Christina?
Yeah, which I don't know how I could put this on blast. I wrote it for the Style magazine because it's an architectural critique of like the Americana and the brand, and specifically it's supposed to be a broader critique of like Italian revival style in LA, which tends to be limited to these like malls and like faux luxury condos. And it was when I got assigned it, the editor was like, well, technically the Style magazine doesn't take political positions. He's like, so we would love for you to write a aesthetic critique of this particular architectural style, of which this particular mayoral candidate happens to be a strong purveyor of.
Wait, is he funding? Is he like funding the development of? Is he a developer basically? Like,
yeah, he's a real estate developer who's
okay.
And
so,
he's behind two of the biggest outdoor malls in LA. There's one is called the Grove and one is called the Americana, and they're basically
he's
these
behind
like
both of them. Oh my god! Like the most religious buildings in LA, basically.
They're both like they're fake Paris mini cities,
right?
Like that are malls and that have apartments in them,
right?
And I got excited because I studied a lot of the like fin de siècle, like modernism in Paris in college, and I was like, I want to write a whole book about our shitty like Beaux-Arts and Italian revival architecture in LA.
I love that. We're about out of time though, guys. I just want to thank everyone for coming. Alex, do you want to say any last words before we go?
No, just thank you all for giving us your time, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for giving us all your work. It was really interesting to sift through it all. And
thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Stefan, for keeping it hot in the chat.
And Jack. And Aaron.
And Jack, Stefan.
And commenters that were the powerhouse commenters.
Honestly, thank you for connecting me with Stephanie because we're pals now, and I'm gonna we have to talk out of this performative interview context because I have been a fan, and I've been reading your work for a while. The first thing I ever read of yours was an article you did for like Adult.
Oh my gosh.
About Akabur, which I was like just reading, and I was like so blown away.
What was the article about?
She wrote I'm glad I can say this really quickly. My introduction to like reading Stephanie's after work was a essay she wrote about against nature. And I remember even then it was so smart because you were writing about the book, but also like the development of the book, like having its own cultural cachet and as a cultural object and
the people who made it. I guess, oh my God, I was doing the same thing. You're right about the web of the people in the relationships and the creation of the.
So, all right, I'm like, oh, this person is like, not only were you like, obviously an astute like literary critic, but you have this awareness of just like how this book just functions as a social object, like beyond its creation. And from then on, I was hooked.
Oh my God, that's so nice. Thank you.
I'm gonna text you and we're gonna talk more.
It's funny. I was just thinking about what I was gonna text you after the conversation.
Okay, great.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much. This was really great.
Before you guys go, what are you guys gonna text me after we leave?
You'll see.
We're gonna
mention it on camera. I feel like I just got ghosted.
What? No, I just have no videos.
I'm totally joking.
No, me and Stephanie are gonna go to. Me and Stephanie are gonna go to Starbucks, so we're gonna talk about you. That's.
I feel like, oh, that's hilarious. Well,
we're gonna go to Earth Cafe and we're gonna talk some shit.
Well, Christina, if you come to New York, you can hang out with Alex, Stephanie, and I. It'll be fun.
I want to go. Like, you're making me. It's so fucking hot here. I want to go to New York so bad.
You should totally come.
It'll happen at some point.
Come in September when I'm back. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Thank
people.
you.
Yeah, if you want to follow up with this afterwards or watch it again, this will be available on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at thefutureleft.com. If you want to find out more about Christina and Stephanie's work, you can find them. What are your tags? It's xtina_. Is it Martinez?
It's xtina_Catherine. Just my
Underscore
first.
Catherine. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're definitely on Twitter, Instagram. Are you on anything else?
No, Twitter and Instagram are good because it's the same handle, and that's usually where I post mostly about shows and stuff.
And Stephanie is Stephanie Cava on Twitter and Instagram, right? Okay, pretty easy to follow both of them. Christina has a book out called Aesthetic Relations. Oh my God. Aesthetical Relations, sorry. And then
Oh, so sweet.
Stephanie Cava has The Super Rationals is already out, and I Fear My Pain Interests You has a September US tour happening. When does the book officially come out, Stephanie?
The official date is September 27th.
Okay, when does your tour start?
It'll be in London September 15th.
So you can buy the book in London September 15th if you're there?
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome. And then when can you buy it in the US?
The 27th.
So on the 27th in the US, and will that be in New York?
Yes.
I will be there. That's awesome. Very exciting.
Thank
Alex
you.
and I will both be there.
And we'll be in LA in October, early October.
You guys can finally meet and talk shit about me. I can't wait.
It's gonna happen before that.
Anyways, anything else? Christina, Christina's currently looking for a place for her.
The comedy special. It's a half hour. It'll be somewhere online before the end of the year.
And it's called How to Bake a Cake in the Digital Age, correct? I mean, it is very amazing. It's well produced. We appreciate you both coming. I hope you guys had a good time, and thank you all for tuning in. Have a good night.
Had a great time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.